Okay, so you're a vocalist, but at the same time you play keyboards and do some programmings too. So do you see yourself as a vocalist or keyboard player?
I think I've always seen myself, because I still compose most of the songs and write most of the songs. I've always maybe looked at myself more as a songwriter and maybe a producer, and not, you know, as much as an instrumentalist in that way. I never got that sort of point where I sort of got one instrument like the guitar and now I sort of just rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and become the greatest. I kind of instead wanted to have a good overall understanding, so I can write for anything from guitar to I don't know, the clarinet or whatever, to understand the range and the sort of how you play the instrument and have a sort of kind of, I'm more the kind of guy who looks at the big picture rather than the one instrument alone. So it's more about the arrangement and that to me. And when it comes to vocals, that's something that only maybe in recent years I've actually started to really sort of study and look into, and I think especially with the sort of more clean vocal style. When we started out, I was pretty bad at that, or didn't really have a lot of training, and now during the years I've sort of grown better.
Yeah, I think you have a very good voice. So who's your favorite vocalist? Because you sound quite different from any metal music singer. You have your own style. So.
Yeah, it's also because my range is much lower than
it's lower, but it's...
I think if our music had that high-pitched power metal voice, it would sound pretty usual actually. So I think because some of the songs maybe lean a bit more towards that sort of melodic power metal sound, but then with my voice it doesn't sound like the same, because it's...
Yeah, but it fits the music of TURISAS perfectly.
Favorite vocalists? I don't know, something like Leonard Cohen or something.
Yes,
the kind of more that's more about the emotion than maybe, it can be rough and it can sound, but it's more about the sort of
maybe tone weights and
that kind of.
Okay. So what about keyboardists? Do you have any favorite keyboard player?
Well, I don't consider myself as a keyboard player at all. It's just the instrument that's easiest to write on, because you can write everything from the low bass to the high melodies and everything in between.
Most useful stuff.
Yeah, but so I don't really have any kind of keyboard idols in that way, because it's not like an instrument that I feel that it's my instrument. It's just something I use as a tool.
Okay. So whenever I listen to your music, I always think that the chorus part is very huge and bombastic. It's very gorgeous. So how do you usually record the chorus part? Do only TURISAS members sing, or do you hire any chorus choir?
It depends. I mean, on the past albums we actually used two different approaches. We used, for some parts we used a more kind of classical choir, which was both men and female, and that was like professional singers in different ranges, maybe 6 or 7 people, that we did like stem by stem, basically. And that of course sounds like the very sort of trained classical choir, but I think in most of the parts it's more that kind of untrained, almost like football chanting choir thing, and that's something that we normally do ourselves, bunch of friends and that kind of thing. So if, for instance, on the album we recorded now, we just had everybody in the band, and then we had friends from other bands that came over, and we had some beer, and then just did the choirs that way.
So you don't use any effect pedals or effector or anything, just singing?
Yeah, just sing, but in the studio we can of course do like take 1, take 2, like overdubs, and then we sort of do different stems, and it sort of grows bigger, because the more sort of harmonic texture you have to it, it sounds bigger.
It sounds really big, so I was always wondering how you made that. Okay, so a lot of the songs from TURISAS can be, metal anthem. You can sing along and sounds totally powerful. Do you have your own heavy metal anthem from any other band?
What usually in the dressing room quite often what gets played before the show is Man of War, because it's something that we grew up with, and even if it's silly and funny at times, it's funny how you can still sort of remember all the lyrics so well, and it's like it's so catchy, and it's kind of a funny band in many ways.
It's hell doing one.
Yeah, it's so over the top that it becomes comical, but then the execution is so serious that it's actually really cool.
Oh,
but I don't know about. I guess on the more serious side, I guess it's more like stuff like Queen has been a big influence for many in the band, because the songwriting and the performance is so
harmonies.
Yeah, and it's very sort of complex and interesting.
Yes. Okay. So you are releasing a new album this August.
Yeah.
So I've heard rough mix. It sounds totally awesome again. So is there any difference from previous albums you want to emphasize? Is there any?
I think the big thing we wanted to do is not do so big orchestrations and make it a more sort of band-driven album and a more band-orientated. We had some lineup changes in the band, and now sort of have a very high level of musicianship in the band as well. New drum and new bass player and a keyboard player as well, who didn't play on the previous album, and we are a good live band, and we wanted to bring that more to the album, also in the way of not overproducing it as we might have done in the past a bit, that everything gets so detailed and like sort of everything is so polished, it kind of loses its edges a bit. So on this album we didn't edit any drums, we didn't do anything like that, and we wanted to very much avoid the sort of very clinical Pro Tools drumming sound that sort of triggered, and instead sort of like keep it with the mistakes and the small shifts in tempo and everything like that, keep them in there, and also make sure that the sounds are more organic in all ways. So I think it is maybe in some ways much more punchier, because it emphasizes the band more than the outside elements. That like Stand Up and Fight was so orchestrated that it's of course impressive in its own way, but it kind of the band becomes very small compared to all the details that's going around it, and now we kind of turn that upside down a bit more. So all the orchestra elements on this song, first of all, we didn't even use orchestra on half of the songs at all, but used keyboards and different other approaches, and where we used orchestra we made sure that we wrote for smaller sections and kind of took more the approach of, I don't know, what Beatles would have done on their albums when they had some horns and stuff. It's more like the individual instruments rather than trying to be a very massive epic thing, and that's kind of the approach we had for that. It's more like you can hear every trumpet separately kind of thing.
But you used the real trumpet players and some other guests?
Yeah, where we used the real guest musicians, but the sections were smaller, and we also didn't use so massive reverbs and everything. It's more like a kind of
audible.
Yeah, it's kind of more like you'd have a studio in a room orchestra and also a band playing in the same room, and I think that definitely makes it sound more live and more kind of genuine in that way.
I see. The songs are a bit faster than the previous album. So was it intentional?
Well, we didn't have, on the previous albums we always had kind of concepts, and on this was the first time for a long time that we actually just decided that we just write music and like single songs and not try to make a big story out of it all. And it was really nice to do that for a change, because of course a concert can be very inspiring, but it's also a bit restricting at times, and now you could just we just wrote songs and decided the direction based on how they ended up, basically. And yeah, some of the songs ended up being a bit faster, and I think there's some of the songs that have a more sort of kind of punk in your face attitude to them, and I think it's maybe more natural for them to be faster, more like D-beat kind of thing, and even some like kind of grindcore thing. I mean, in our music, in the end, it won't sound like hardcore grindcore, but there's some influence from that too.
Do you listen to grindcore and punk rock stuff too?
I'm not. It's the same like with classical. It's not like my I don't know all the underground bands and everything that's going on, but yeah, I love to go to see shows like that, like especially the sort of Swedish scene with Mathias Nygård and
D-beat stuff.
Yeah, the sort of Swedish scene, Totalt Jävla Mörk and that kind of thing, which is very sort of. And then there's the band called Driller Killer,
Yeah.
Kind of like very sort of raw, and I like that stuff, and especially live, it has that sort of energy to it. You know, it's not so controlled, it's just sort of how it is. So yeah, so that sort of influenced some of the songs, but I guess there's so many things coming in from different sides that it's not so obvious, and I guess that's kind of even better, because we don't want to sound like Driller Killer, but if we take some elements from Driller Killer, it can become kind of interesting in the end.
It still sounds like TURISAS.
Yeah.
Okay, that is all for the questions. Could you give some message to the Japanese fan?
Yeah, should I speak to the camera?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Mathias Nygård from TURISAS. We had a great time here in Tokyo, played a great show yesterday, and our new album is coming out in August. It's going to be different than the ones we've done in the past again. I hope you'll find it, go get it. I'm sure you'll like it, and we hope to come back to Japan very soon when the new album is out to do a proper club tour and play some headline shows finally for you guys. Can't wait to come back. See you soon. Thank you.
Yeah, you should, because last night you played only 30 minutes. It was too short for the fans, so hopefully.
Yeah, every time we've been in Japan, we always played like fest. We did Loud Park in 2010, a very short set as well. So it would be nice to come over and play the full set.
So when you headline, how long did the show?
We maybe play for 75, 80 minutes. It's not like 2 or 3 hours. I hate that when I go to shows, and even if you love the band to death, it's like
sometimes
I don't want to get bored and like start feeling like aching in my legs and start feeling like, oh, they could sort of hope they end soon so I can go home, you know. So I want to keep it sort of short, and also we put on a very sort of physical show and with a lot of energy and everything. So if we would do 2-hour shows, we could never sort of keep the same energy up for 2 hours.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks.